Hey guys, Mr. Riss here to help you out with the 213 assignment here where you guys need to put together the selfie stick. So right here I have the fully completed version so you have kind of an idea of what should happen here. If you look, we have the stick bottom kind of slides up and down on the stick top. At the same time too, this stick top is attached to what's known as the stick adapter, and that can rotate around. We have a pin here connecting, which also can rotate freely. Now with that pin is connected to what's called the shoe bottom. The shoe bottom is right here. The shoe bottom is just rigidly joined to the shoe top, and there is the right here called the shoe connects it to the top of the phone case. And the phone case can slide up and down, so we can have different types of phones here. So selfie sticks, most of you guys have probably seen something similar to this. We're going to try to build this. So a couple things. First thing we need to do is to get the parts. So make sure you guys do this. We need to find the parts and they are in our IED folder. So over to the top, if you don't have it already, you're going to show the data panel here. You're going to go to the LHS IED folder. If if it isn't showing up already for you guys, if you don't see that, remember you click the home, make sure you click all projects, and you should see LHS IED. Double tap that. And it's in the 213 folder. You're going to open it up there, and you're going to find the IED 213 selfie sticks part underscore fusion underscore student. Now, you are not going to, yeah, I don't need to do that. Not going to make any changes to this document per se right now. You need to then save this in your folder. So we're going to go up to the top where it says File, and you're going to click Save As. Say if Save As is not an option for you, you might have to save it first, then do Save As. Sometimes, depending if there are multiple people accessing the same file at the same time, the internet gets a little bogged down. So you might have to just do that. But we're going to click Save As. You're going to rename it with the first part of your name. And you can leave the rest the same, 223, as long as you know, and you're going to save it in your folder. If you don't save it in if you don't save it in your folder, it will be deleted. So to go to your folder, you're going to go to locations here. You're going to click on the drop down menu. You're going to go through LHS IED. You may have to click on the word here to go back a folder. And then you're going to scroll down and find you. Oh, there is Mr. Riz. I'm going to save it there. Oop, you know what? I'm going to just kind of do that again because I might have not. Once again, file save as. Yep, I did not save it there in my folder. I even made that mistake. So you got to double tap, make sure that that file opens. It says now LHS IED arrow, then your name. Save it there. Okay, so watching this video, I'm going to give you guys a couple clues here to help you guys out. A couple things that help us out here is like this top here. This top already actually comes with a join. See, there is a slider join, but we cannot really preview this join at all. I mean, it's right there, but we can't move it because things are not pinned down. There's a lot of complications with this. So to make our life easier, first thing I was going to do over here, go to joins. I'm going to right click on this slider one. We're going to delete that join. You technically don't need to, but trust me, this is going to make your life easier. Uh, so now they are completely separate. I can move them independently from each other. The next thing you're going to do is we need to pin, actually not really pin, but well, yeah, we're going to pin and not ground an object. So we want to find an object here that we're going to kind of build around. And it's a little weird to conventionally think of. I like to use this piece here, the shoe bottom, as my starting point. Now, that might not be what you normally would think of, but we're going to start here. So what I'm going to do is click on this to see, actually, it's called the shoe top. And then move the data pane. We don't need to see that. I'm going to go over here to shoe top, right click on that, and not do ground to parent. Because of its location, it's going to be easier to just pin it. Essentially, it's the same thing. The parent gets a little bit more complicated, something we won't really get into in this course, but um, we got it all pinned. And now it is not going to move at all. If I try to move it, it's stuck. I can move all the other pieces. No problem. Can't move this one. Okay. Next thing, you got that there. I'm going to go over and I'm going to be doing a lot of things. If we haven't talked about it, let's talk about how we use our mouse. You should be using a mouse here to help with movements. Okay. Big thing in the mouse is the scroll wheel. If I use the scroll wheel in and out, it zooms in and out of our picture. This is really important when we're trying to look up details and things like that, finding specific parts. Other things that we can do with the scroller, if I click in the scroll wheel and move around, I can kind of just still be zoomed in, but see a different view, like just basically move the window, sliding everything over. And then the next thing I'm going to show you guys do, if I hold down the shift button and then push in the scroll wheel and move it around, I'm changing the view, changing the orientation here. So I can look at things from different perspectives. Okay. Use those techniques. I'm going to be using them, but be aware of them. Okay. So let's work on the top part first. If we think about it here, this piece here has a hole in it, and that hole should line up with this hole here on the bottom. All right. And so we're going to join those two together. Now, to help you guys out here, what I'm going to do here is we're going to use an assembly and we're going to use a join. We could just press J on our keyboard if we're going to join, but it's probably a good habit to do assembly, a join. Get used to that before you start using the hotkey called J. All right, so now what we need to do are pick our two components. Make sure double check that you don't have any components accidentally selected. If you do, just click the X there. But okay, neither one of these are selected. All right, and so we need to pick the circle. Now, I always like to kind of start with whatever face we're working with and sliding over to what part of the face we're going to connect or line up. So when I'm on this bottom face here, I could try to move to this circle here and it technically goes inside, which is okay because the center of the circle face here is the same as the center of the circle of the cylinder. It all matches up, it's all lined up, it's okay. But just to kind of be consistent here, whenever you're on a face, if you hold down the control key, you can then slide your mouse over to that point and it still sticks there. Okay, so I want this specific center circle here. And what do we want that to line up with? I'm going to, kind of change my orientation here. I want it to line up with this center circle there. So zooming in, I'm on the face, holding down the control key, moving my mouse over, and pressing enter. Now, moved over, it actually probably would be okay if we have it like that, but I do want to talk about the other things that we can do. Remember, if by chance you connected those together and it isn't lining up the way that you want it to, Fusion is kind of doing a little assumption here with your clicks and assuming that you want it at certain views, certain orientations, but it doesn't always get this 100% of the time. We may have to look over here with our window. I'm going to move my face so we can see the join window here and change some of the things about it. We might need to flip it around to change direction, which is definitely not what we want. That'd be inside of it. We may need to use the offset, and we might either to slide it in and out, or we might even need to type it in. We could even change the angle. In fact, the angle is probably what I'm going to change here. I'm going to look, had to change my view here. I like to use this little circle here to change the angle, and I'm going to flip it all the way around, just because in my head, that's how it makes sense. Although it would work the same way. And I would say that's good. Now, what you also want to do is look to see what kind of motion we're doing. Right now, by default, it is a rigid motion. So if I play that, that means the two things are basically glued together. They are stuck, welded, whatever you want to say, they are stuck together. I can stop shaking. But remember, there's other types of movements we can do. We can have rotational joins, which would look nice, but it doesn't look like that's the purpose. We can have sliders, which means it moves in and out. We can have cylinder, pin, ball, but a rigid joint is what we want. I think that looks good. I'm going to click OK to solidify that. And we can see that joint is now added to our list here. If I try to now move this piece, it doesn't move. And that's because it's rigid to this point, the shoe top. And that shoe top is now solid connected to that. Okay, well, let's finish doing the top piece here. Let's connect this sliding piece here, the phone holder top piece, to this phone holder bottom. If we think about it, if I have this lined up, I should have this piece is going to have to flip and turn. So this cylinder here should line up with this far cylinder over here. And remember, start with faces that are going to be touching each other. So I think it'd be best to work with this circle here. Now I'm going to click away from it so I don't kind of mess up here. It's always good to make sure you don't have anything highlighted or anything like that before you do your assembly. So we're going to go to assemble and we're going to join again, double checking our snaps, nothing selected. And okay, yep, I want the center of this circle here. Once I click that, it's going to ask us for component two. What's it going to line up with? Clicking, dragging the mouse. I want it to line up with this far center of the circle here. All right. Now, you can see here, this is another good example. I'm going to change the view of this, where it's doing some predictive. It lined up that center of the circle with the other center of the circle. They are touching, the center points are right on top of each other. But realistically, that doesn't make sense. We need to look at our angles or we might need to flip it. I'm thinking in my head, I might just flip this. Okay, flip the other way, the wrong direction. So maybe we need to change the angle. We'll rotate it around to, okay, 0 degrees. There we go. It looks right. Or it looks correct. Now, what kind of motion do we want? A rigid joint kind of makes sense a little bit, but this is a piece that needs to be adjustable for multiple things. So let's put a slider. We want it to go in and out. With the slider, we probably should put some limits on this because we don't want this to go too far. We also don't want it to go too far in, too far out, or too far in. So put some mins and maxes on here. All right, let's talk about max. Well, or min. If I'm going in, we're actually going to have a negative number here. So I'm going to just mess around like -3. Okay, that is too far. -2. It's still too far. -1. -1.2 or -1.3. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then max, 0 means it'd be actually right on side outside. So I'm going to do like -0.1. Remember, just pick numbers that probably look best for you. And let's preview that. Okay, it goes in, not all the way, goes out, still stays in the cylinder. Okay, we can press OK. And now, if I try to move this bottom piece here, nothing happens because it's connected to the ground piece. But we can now adjust the slider. It can move in and out. Not as far, it doesn't go out forever, but it's kind of locked in place there. Cool. All right, so we kind of got that top piece. Now we got to work on connecting these components here. Let's talk about this. We want to put the shoe into the hole here. So this shoe should be inside this hole and kind of stuck there to keep everything in place. And then we need to hook up the shoe bottom. So let's talk about the shoe here. Now, one thing we want to think about, what faces are touching. So technically, like this circle face here, like this ledge, this lip, whatever you want to call it here, needs to be touching this lip here. And then to find points that they'll have in common, the points will be the center of those circles. All right, so I'm going to start here with this edge here. I'm going to do join, which is this icon here. All right, I'm going to get my mouse. I'm going to hover it over the face that's going to be touching. I'm going to hold down the control key and move my mouse. Okay, now it has that point selected. Okay. And then I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to be on this face here. You know what I'm going to do on purpose just to show you? If I accidentally pick the wrong point, okay, that's not looking right. Even just, let's get rid of the motion, rigid motion here. If that position is not right, the best thing you can do, unfortunately, just cancel. Try again. Okay. Sometimes it actually might be easier to start with a different piece first. So let's join again. Maybe I'll start. No, I can't because that's pin. You can't always start with a pin item. You can start with, you can join things that two pinned objects. You just can't move pinned objects. It's kind of weird. But okay, so let's take this piece here. Once again, Control Shift. Got the center of that piece there right on that edge. And we want it to be at the same point as this piece right here. Okay, and it's predicting a sliding motion just because our last was slider. Let's go back up to our tab here, change it to a rigid. So those two pieces are locked together. Okay. Next thing we want to do, we want to move this piece over to here. Now they're just going to be kind of, I guess, glued together. It's kind of a weird design in my mind. Doesn't really make sense why those would be two separate components. This makes sense, but not that as being two separate. But you know what? I didn't make it. So the one thing about this, we don't have like a circle that we can line up. So remember, you can line up like edge points as well. So like this top edge here should touch this top edge point here, that top vertex. So just take your time. Let's do another join. Go into the surface. Okay, this face here, but I'm going to hold down control. Actually, I'm going to move that over so I can definitely see. All right, hold down control and move it over to this point. All right, so that was the top. What do I want to match it up with over here? On that face, holding down control, moving up to the same point that's going to be there. Remember, you might have to, it might predict, you might have to flip it, you might have to rotate it, change the little axis, but take your time with this. You'll get better at it. Go nice and slow. That looks good. Double check the motion. We want a rigid joint. Those are all going to be stuck together, good pieces. Looks good there. Okay, so it'd be like we'd probably use some type of adhesive to glue that together. All right, let's build the stick part now. So the stick part's not too bad. We have this big bottom piece that needs to go into this top piece here. So like these two edges here, like this piece is going to connect to this piece here. And okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to go here, going to do a join again. Going to go to the circle and be like, okay, the center of the circle should line up with all the way over on the other side, the center of the circle. All right, now I don't want a rigid joint because I want to have the option to extend or collapse the stick if we need to. That's a slide joint. Typically, when we have slide or revolve joints, we want to put some mins and maxes on it. Minimum, since we are going to collapse it and make it smaller, we need to have a negative number. Negative 10. It's pretty good. What about negative 15? Oh, that's way too far. Negative 12. That's too much. Negative 11 looks pretty good. And then maximum, we definitely don't want 0 or anything bigger. Like 3 actually goes beyond. So we still want to keep it negative, but negative like 0.5. Let me preview that to double check it. You know, always do your previews. Take that extra second. Does it look good? Does it do what you want it to do? Then click OK. It is easier to double check. Once you click OK, there's only kind of two ways to go back and do that. Either carefully go through and edit that, or just delete it and start over again. Okay, now if I try to move it, it doesn't slide because this piece here is free to move. And so when we try to move this, it's also moving. All right, let's put the stick adapter on the edge of this stick here. So think about it. It's not, we're going to have this hole here line up with the hole here. We actually want it to talk about like this face here. So this edge, this inner lip should line up with that circle there. So just be a little careful with how you're lining things up. So let's join. Go over here to this circle. All right, going to press and hold control to line up that circle piece there. The center of it should line up with this center of the circle there. Okay, it's thinking we got to do a slide, which looks kind of silly. It should be a rigid joint. You may think, okay, a revolve joint, like it could rotate around, which is fine to think, but typically you'd screw it in, you tighten it so it doesn't move too much. You wouldn't want your camera as you're holding it to just slightly rotate freely. So let's make it a rigid joint. That's typically what we're going to do. That should be okay. All right, so same thing. If we try to move this, it moves it all together because it's not connected. So then the last thing we want to do is let's put, not the last thing actually, but let's put this stick adapter onto there. Now keep in mind here, if we're going to do that, the stick adapter only actually has like a outside hole, but we need to line up the inside part of this stick adapter with the outside edge over here. So looking at this, we're going to do a join. Going to zoom in to get the inside part here. I'm on the face, holding down control, selecting that circle. Zooming out, pressing shift and the scroll wheel to change the perspective. All right, now going to this face here, lining up, press and holding control, finding that circle, put it on there. Now, motion wise, when it makes sense to be rigid, we want to have some movement here. So we're going to do a revolve. Now, revolving would be nice if we want to be able to do a full 360, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to put some limitations to it. All right, so let's mess around with those numbers here. Start with the maximum. 90-degree max. Okay, that looks good. Minimum, probably want to go with the complete opposite way, -90. So double check this. Does this kind of look to see? Yep, that looks right. Don't need to flip it or anything. Good. Okay, almost there. There's one key element, and that's going to be whoever reads the instructions will notice what's going on here. So now the slider actually works because we are kind of at a joint here. This rigid joint, not a rigid joint, but that revolute joint only allows us to move up and down that way. So we can slide this in and out. Alrighty, here is the problem. How's that going to stay in there? How's it going to fix? If you check out Canvas, open up Canvas here, the assignment. No, that's the wrong page. Try that again. Here we go. All right, the 213, putting things together. The problem is if we read, we're missing a component. We need to insert a component from the McMaster car component library. And so this component is called the 91185A911. Rolls off the tongue. It is a plastic head thumb screw to arm that's a 10 to 32 thread, 1 inch long part. I'm just going to copy that because there ain't no way I'm going to remember that. But to insert some commonly used items here, we're going to go over to insert. And we're going to insert from the McMaster car component. This is a cool collaboration with Autodesk Fusion, where McMaster has 3D models of all the parts that they sell. So we can look through them individually, or if we actually know the product, we can just paste it in. And sometimes we have to pick, like specifically, do we want the left or right? We are not going to order these in packs of 10. What we're going to do instead is we're going to download it. You do need to make sure that you pick the 3D step. You can do 3D steps or 3D step with no threads. It's just steps is a little bit larger file. We click download. The computer does its thing. It actually gets it from the internet, the website there. I'm going to move it out because it gets placed right in the middle of our screen. I'm going to move it out. Say, okay, that is our new component that we're going to add. Definitely need to make sure you have this. Okay. So if we think about this here, I would put this screw into this hole here, rotate it down, make a pretty, well, not a rigid connection. We'd want to be able to adjust the tightness of that. So, but the big thing is like this face here should be touching this face here. So let's join them together. All right, what face is holding onto this face? This center circle part should match up here, holding down control, going to its center circle part. Okay, now remember, that looks weird. Why would it just take that piece out? It's saving memory here by using just the two components. It will realize that like, hey, that is pinned together. It will move everything around. All right, does this kind of look right? Would we want to type of motion, of revolute motion? Would we want, now it wouldn't be so much the assembly rotating around the screw. It'd be the screw rotating around the assembly, but that looks good to me. I'll press OK. There we go. So now we have the screw on the assembly. It rotates around. If we rotate this here too, it's all good to go. The screw is free. It looks nice. Cool. Okay. So this is our completed selfie stick. All good to go. Thank you for watching here. And if you have any questions, make sure you guys ask. Other than that, I think you guys got it. All right. Have a good one, guys. And I will see you later.